I am thrilled that I got to be on the test team for the Sarah bag from Mormino. This pattern is released with her Sew Whatever project box, and as someone who is a huge fan of Lauren as both a sewist and a human, I was so excited to have this opportunity. To me, Lauren is definitely the Taylor Swift of the sewing world, and I could not love her anymore. This pattern is exactly what you would expect from a Mormino pattern. It is a medium-sized handbag. You do have a crossbody strap, but it can also be a backpack if you want. You will get both versions in the pattern. It comes together quick and easy, very common sense way it comes together, but a unique design. Lauren designed this pattern to be a no interfacing pattern because as a busy mom and business owner, she knows how important time is. However, for me, I did not have some of the recommended materials that she called for in the pattern. I don't have waterproof canvas for the lining, so I will be interfacing my lining, but just know if you buy the project box or if you follow her pattern recommendations for the materials used, you won't need to. For materials today, for my print on this vinyl and the lining, I had the vinyl and the lining both in this print. The prints you see that I'm using today are all from the Emporium, which is ran by Brittany Nicole. She will have a video for this pattern as well. Of course, Lauren will also. I'm using thread from Wizardry. I'm using zipper tape from Mormino, and I'm using a glitter vinyl from My Little Shindig. Let's go ahead and get started sewing up this pattern and just see how quickly and beautifully it comes together. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make my straps. For mine, I'm going to show you how I do the double strap. This is written in the pattern, so you have a contrast and your regular print. You can do this for the handles, but also the crossbody strap as well. First thing you do is you draw a line down the center of both of these pieces, and then you fold the raw edges to the center. After you have those raw edges folded to the center, then you're going to just place those folded raw edges together. So the folded seam there in the middle will be together, and then you'll have your pretty print on both sides. It will look like this after you get it folded and clipped together. You can use double-sided tape or whatever you want. I just use clips, but definitely double-sided tape is what most people use. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sew 1/8 of an inch down both of these long edges to connect this all together. I'm going to do that same process for the other handle, and you can also do it on your crossbody strap if you want to. Our next step will be to construct the back panel. We have 3 separate pieces that will make up that back panel. You could do them all the same color, you could do them different prints, you could have these 2 the same, whatever you want. What you're going to do is you are going to take the top or the bottom, whichever way you want to start, and just flip it down. It is going to be right sides together. So for me, I'm going to start with the top and place it right sides together with the middle. I'm going to sew all along that edge with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Then I'm going to butterfly the seam and top stitch it. We'll do the same thing with this bottom piece to get that back constructed. You don't have to butterfly the seam, it's just what I prefer the look of and the feel of, so that's what I'm going with. I'm just finger pressing this seam open. If you wanted to, you could use double-sided tape, but I'm just going to do it this way. I'm going to top stitch from the front. Typically I like to top stitch from the back so I can make sure everything stays open, but where I have a variegated thread, I really want to use that and show it with my top stitching. So I'm just going to go slow, start sewing 1/8 of an inch away, and then just occasionally check to make sure that seam isn't closing on me or folding over. This is how that first section looks. You will take this bottom piece and go ahead and attach it to the same way to this bottom of your middle panel piece. I have the back completed, so now it's time to start working on the front. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to grab out the front, middle, and your front bottom piece. This is the last bottom and middle piece you'll have. The only thing left you will have for the front exterior is the top piece. So let's go ahead and do this construction the same way as we did the back. Take that middle piece, flip it down onto the bottom, and sew with the seam allowance given the pattern. Make sure your sides and that top edge of the bottom is up against the bottom edge of the middle. Now that I have these two pieces sewn together, I'm going to go ahead and butterfly the seam, top stitch on both sides, just like I did on the one on the back. After you sew together the bottom and the middle for the exterior, go ahead and set it aside for just a minute. Pull out your zipper piece. Mine has 2 pulls on it, and I do have the center marked. And then grab out your 3 zipper tabs and your lining panel piece. This is your front lining pocket pieces. I'm just using a cotton woven from the Emporium, but her cotton woven feels very secure. It almost feels like a canvas. It's very stable, so I'm not putting anything on the back of this piece. Zipper tabs definitely don't get interfaced. So with my zipper tabs, the first thing I do is need to create the center zipper tab. For that piece, the way you do it is you make a mark, and the pattern tells you what that mark is, but basically you're folding those pieces to the center for the raw edges, and then you can just clip it like that. So the raw edges are just meeting in the middle. For the other 2 zipper tabs, you use the measurement given the pattern, and you fold just one side to that mark to have those 2 pieces prepped. You will take this center zipper tab and place it directly in the center, matching the center marks of your zipper tab with the center marks of the zipper. You are going to sew all around this rectangle, attaching it to your zipper tape. For the other 2 zipper tabs, what you're going to do is you're going to take the raw edge and match it up with the raw edge of the zipper tape. Just lay them flush together. The folded edge should be closer to your zipper pull. Clip that in place. Then you're just going to sew down the folded edge about 1/8 of an inch away to secure these 2 pieces together. I'm going to do that same step with the other side of the zipper and my remaining zipper tab. My zipper is prepped. Just so you know, you can change how you want your zippers to go. I'm just having mine close both in the middle, and then they'll open both to the outside. It really doesn't matter. It's whatever your preference is. They can both go to the left. They can both open this way, however you feel like doing it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull out one of my lining pieces. I'm going to place it right sides up, and I'm just going to place my zipper on top and have it all along that top edge, and I'm just going to baste it in place at this point. After we have the zipper basted to the lining, both of these are right sides up, we're going to take that exterior piece and we're going to place it right sides down, so everything's right sides together at this point. Match up that top edge, and let's go ahead and sew across, this time with the full seam allowance given in the pattern. Now that we have these sewn, let's go ahead and flip these apart, and let's just top stitch these 2 pieces together. So make sure you pull your lining so it's down and not in the way of the zipper. Line everything up. Let's just go ahead and top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from that seam we just sewed. Let's take that other remaining lining piece for that front zipper, place it right sides up, and then just put this piece on top of it right sides up, and we're going to match up that top edge just to base this in place. So I'm matching up the sides and the top. I'm just going to go 1/8 of an inch to get this attached together. Now that you have the 2 linings sewn together, go ahead and grab that last top piece. We're going to take it and we're going to place it right sides together and sew along that top edge of the zipper. That's going to be sewing the zipper, the exterior top, and the lining all together with the full seam allowance given in the pattern. At this point, what you want to do is you want to flip up your exterior. You're going to leave your lining right sides together, of course, because when you get in your pocket, you're going to go down. You don't want to flip it up. So leave that down. Just flip up this exterior piece, and then you will be sewing through the seam of the vinyl and the zipper and top stitch to connect the seam to this vinyl piece. This is the way my exterior looks. Now we're going to come down and work on this bottom lining piece. What I want to do is I want to sew with the seam allowance all across the bottom. Please take note of the seam allowance. It is a much bigger seam allowance, so definitely note that, and then go ahead and sew across from one side to the other, just across the bottom. We have the bottom closed on this pocket, but right now it's just a big opening here. We have two zippers and we have it closed, so let's go ahead and separate the lining too, so we have two separate zipper compartments. I drew a line down the middle. The pattern tells you how far in to measure from the side to make this mark. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sew on either side of this line. You can choose the seam allowance of what you want as long as it's consistent, but I'm going to sew up, over, and back down to close up these pockets, so I have two zipper pockets. As I'm getting to the top here, I'm going to get as close as I can to that exterior. We're not sewing through the exterior at any point. It doesn't matter if you have a small gap. Nothing's going to go through that little spot there, so don't stress over if you can't get close enough. Just sew up to where the foot is starting to climb up on the exterior, but not going through it. My zipper pocket is done. We don't have to worry about the sides so much. They'll get closed whenever we're doing the final construction. It's time to work on the connectors. Now, depending on the type of bag you're making or the way you're carrying it, you could have anywhere from 2 to 6 connectors. I'm going to make all 6. The 6 I'm making will be 4 for the handles, and they will have rectangle rings like this one. And I'm going to make 2 for a crossbody strap, which I'll add D-rings to. The first thing I do is I draw a line down the center, and then I just fold both of these long raw edges to that center. You can use double-sided tape or glue, whatever you prefer, but I'm just going to use some clips. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to top stitch down these. The pattern tells you the seam allowance to top stitch. This is not a necessary step because you will top stitch whenever you add them to the bag, but I like the double row of top stitching, and I feel like it helps you kind of hold everything down since I'm not adding any tape or glue to mine. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to top stitch down each side with the seam allowance given in the pattern. I'll go across the bottom and then come up the other side. And at this point, whether you're adding the D-ring or the rectangular ring, you'll do it the same way. You'll slip it on, and then the pattern tells us that we go down about 2/3 and then about up 1/3 so that they meet, the raw edges meet there in the middle. At this point, it probably would be best if you did some kind of securing with either glue or double-sided tape or something, because our next step will be to attach this onto the bag. For me, this next step is one of the most stressful steps in this bag. We have to sew this connector onto the front. I am not the best at top stitching. I'm not the best at measuring and keeping things all perfectly neat and organized, neat and orderly. So I have the mark made as to where I put this connector. So it's going to sit right here. And so now I have to make sure that I keep it straight and I sew it on properly and have nice stitches. You can definitely use something to kind of hold it in place for sure to help you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start sewing across this side first to attach it and then go down the rest of the rectangle. I'm not sewing an X on mine, but if you wanted to, you could, or you could also add rivets. My first one is done. I'm going to go ahead and attach the other one on the front and then 2 on the back since I'm not doing the backpack style. Once you have your connectors all put on, it's time to go ahead and finish up this exterior. Pull out that base piece and your 2 exteriors, the front and the back. What you're going to do is you're going to take the base and you're going to just center it on the bag, which means it will fit exactly in between the 2 cutout areas. Then you are going to sew it together, right sides together, with the seam allowance given in the pattern. After you have that sewn together, we're just going to flip the base down. We'll leave the seam allowance going down too, and then we're just going to top stitch along that base, and that will be attaching the base to the seam allowance. We're going to do that about 1/8 of an inch away from that finished edge that we just sewed. And then we will repeat these same steps to attach this base to the back of the bag. I have the base sewn to both the front and the back. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these pieces right sides together. I'm going to match up these sides, and I'm going to sew with the full seam allowance given the pattern for these sides, making sure that I catch that lining pocket. So make sure your pocket is laying the right way. We want it to be closed up at this step. You're going to sew down both sides with the seam allowance given in the pattern, and then we'll come back and just box the corners. After you get the sides sewn together, what you're going to do is box your corners. So I'm just going to make a mark so that I know where the center of this base is. I'll know where the center of this side piece is because there's a seam there. I'm going to go inside, I'm going to open up that seam and match them up. So just clip those seams or those centers together, put some clips all along this side, and then I'm going to sew across this edge with the seam allowance given in the pattern, and I'm going to go as straight as possible to make sure I have a really nice box corner. So I'm going to open this bag up, I'm going to push this down so that I can see clearly to make sure there's nothing being like kind of sewn at an angle. When you have this side seam sewn, you can trim it down, make sure it's straight on both sides, and then go ahead and repeat that for the other side. After you have sewn the bottom, box the corners and all that, the next thing to do to the exterior is if you're going to be using a crossbody strap, you want to go ahead and attach one of your D-ring connectors. You're going to open up this seam, and then the pattern tells you how far down to place it. And you're going to do it just like you did the ones on the front. You're just going to place it on that line. It'll be centered there. And then you'll sew all around that rectangle to attach it to this seam. Repeat those same steps to add the D-ring connector to the other side, and then we'll start working on our lining. To get started working on the lining, I'm going to add a zipper pocket. This is going to be how we're going to turn the bag, so you could leave it out and do a drop-in lining, but I'm going to follow the pattern directions. I have the overlay template cut out of vinyl that the pattern gives us, and I'm going to stitch around the exterior of this box. Then I will cut an opening, insert the zipper, and have the lining pieces attached to the zipper. Really quick, simple, but let's get started first by sewing on this overlay. Now that I have the perimeter sewn around of this overlay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it in half and then just start by making a snip in the middle, and then I'm going to cut around, leaving about 1/4 of an inch from that row of stitches. Definitely make sure you're really careful. You want to make sure your scissors get in between that overlay and the fabric. You do not want to risk cutting that overlay. Now that we have the opening cut out, let's go ahead and prep the zipper. Let's have that zipper lining piece right sides up. Let's take the zipper tape and place it right sides up as well. We are going to sew this zipper into place with the seam allowance given in the pattern. After you sew the zipper together with the lining piece, what I like to do is I like to flip it back and just tack down that edge of the zipper tape. This isn't necessary, but it just makes it easier when we add it to that template box. We're going to repeat those same steps for the other side of the zipper, and I'll trim up my edges and add a pull, and then we'll come back to insert that into that zipper overlay. Now that my zipper is complete, all I do is I take this lining piece and I just lay it on top. I am going to center the zipper teeth in the middle of that box. Make sure you have an even amount of zipper tape on both sides, and now we're just going to sew around the perimeter of the box. A little different than what the pattern says. I have both of my lining pieces open. Doing it this way, I will lose a little bit, so I'll have to trim a little bit on mine, but it's okay. It's just the way I'm used to doing it, so I'm going to continue on doing it this way. So also about 1/8 of an inch away from the opening of that overlay. Now that we got that stitched on, we're going to flip it over to the back, pull down these two lining pieces, and this is where I was talking about that I'd lose some there at the bottom. Add a few clips, and then we'll flip it back over so that we can sew it from the exterior side. What I like to do is I like to pull back the exterior, and I like to get as close as possible. We are just sewing down the sides. Like I said, we're leaving the bottom open so that we can turn the bag through that opening. And after we trim everything up, then we'll just go ahead and start making that recessed zipper piece. To start working on our recessed zipper, you're going to cut the zipper tape to the length given in the pattern. You're going to sew or clip or melt the ends of the zipper down to a 90-degree angle. I have my zipper pull on, but I do not have my tab on at the end. You should have 2 lining and 2 exterior pieces. What you do is the pattern gives you a measurement, you draw a line at that measurement, and then you simply fold the raw edge to that line. This is going to give you that finished edge on your recessed zipper. You can use glue, tape, clips, whatever you want to hold that in place while you're working with it. For me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the lining piece. I have it clipped under. I'm going to take my zipper, and I have my lining right sides up. I'm going to lay my zipper right sides up. The pattern tells us that we want the zipper teeth just about 1/8 of an inch from the folded edge, and we'll have the folded edges on all the sides, so both sides of this, and this is how we start sewing. So for the zipper, for the lining, I'm just going to do a quick basting stitch just to get this attached, and then I will come in with the full seam allowance on the exterior. Now that we have that lining piece attached, I'm going to go ahead and take my exterior piece. I have this right sides up. I'll take the exterior and place it right sides down on top. I'm going to match up the folded edges, which will again leave that zipper about 1/8 of an inch away. And now we sew with the full seam allowance down this side. After we do that, we're going to flip these two pieces wrong sides together and then sew all around. So it'll be a basting stitch on the raw edge, and then on the finished edge, it'll be a top stitch. When I'm coming to the bottom of this, I'll make sure my two pieces match up or line up. If they don't, I will correct it then. That's one reason why I don't really add anything, like as far as double-sided tape or glue, because I just feel like I always mess this step up, and I want them to line up really nicely. This is the first side of the recessed zipper done. I'm going to complete those same steps to the other side, and then we'll attach it to the lining piece. It's time to start putting the rest of the pieces for this lining panel together. So I'm starting with the one with the zipper pocket, but you could start with the other lining, whichever you prefer. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull out my completed recessed zipper. I went ahead and marked the centers. I'm going to be careful with my zipper pull because I do not have anything attached here at the bottom. If you want, you can sew across here a few times, or you could add your zipper tab. I'm okay to wait till that step to the end, so I'm just going to be cautious. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this center mark here, the center mark on the lining, and I'm going to match them up, having my zipper, my recessed zipper panel, right sides up. So the linings of both the recessed zipper and your lining panel piece will be right sides together. Let's go ahead and baste this in place just along that top edge. Once you have that recessed zipper attached, pull out one, you will have 2 of these top lining panel pieces. It will be about the same size lengthwise as this lining piece. If it's not, double check your measurements. You want to have it orientated, so if your print's directional, it's going all in the right way, all in the same way. Then at that point, what you'll do is you will just flip it down, and so they're right sides together, and then you will sew all the way across this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Now it's time to top stitch. You have 2 choices here. You can either leave your seam allowance going up and just flipping up this panel piece and top stitching here, or if you wanted this recessed zipper as Lauren calls it, to look perkier, you can push that seam down and then top stitch. I prefer mine to be a little more discreet, so I'm just going to leave the seam allowance and I'm going to top stitch all along this top panel piece just 1/8 of an inch away from the edge I just sewed. At this point, what you're going to do is you're going to repeat those steps for this other side with the other lining piece. Then we're going to do everything we did on the exterior. You'll add the base to the bottom of both sides. You'll sew down the sides of the 2 lining pieces, having them right sides together, and then you will box the corners. After that, it'll just be time to do those last few steps, and then we have this bag done. The pieces I have left are the exterior, the completed lining, my handles, and I have a zipper tab. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting everything together. We're at those final steps. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add a zipper tab here to the end, just because whenever I'm pulling this through the pocket, I just don't want any risks. So I just grabbed a piece of vinyl and I just clipped it on here. I'm going to top stitch, then trim up the edges. No big deal on this piece. We have our lining right sides out and we have the exterior wrong sides out. We're going to put the lining inside the exterior, and you want to make for sure that you orientate it so that your zipper closes to the left or whichever way you prefer. First thing you'll do is you'll match up both sets of your seams and then your center marks, and then clip all the way around. We are going to sew this all the way around this entire opening here with the seam allowance given the pattern. You can trim it down if you want to, I'm not going to, and then you're going to turn it through the opening in the bag. Make sure that you know that you are not sewing any on the recessed zipper. You're only sewing on this raw edge here, this top panel piece. The recessed zipper, this zipper tail, all of that's going to be down in the bag. I'm going to do these steps off camera because I cannot clip far away from me and do it properly. So I'm going to pull it to me, clip everything around, then I'll come back to sew it on camera. So I have these two clipped together. This is the exterior, this is the lining. You can see already how well it fits. That's a great looking lining. So now I'm just going to sew all the way around here, and with the seam allowance given the pattern, making sure I lock in those stitches. After I turn, we still have to attach those handles. Just a side note, the pattern actually calls for rolled handles, which I did with my first version, but this version I wanted the double fold, or the double, I don't know what it's called really, but I wanted that one, so I did a little differently. But just so you know, there's very good instructions for a faux rolled handle. Let's go ahead and reach in through this opening in the pocket and start slowly turning everything out. I have everything turned and I have the top clipped. So let's look at everything before we start doing that final top stitching. So first off, look at how amazing that lining is. It is just a perfectly fitting lining. I haven't sewn the zipper pocket closed yet. I'll do that off camera. We all know how to do that. But what I want to do is I want to top stitch around the exterior of this bag. So we're just going to go 1/8 of an inch all the way around. The way I like to do it is I clip. You can see I have these bigger clips on here to kind of compress things a little bit. I like to make sure that there's no lining showing. So while I'm sewing around this, I'm going to be checking and rolling the lining under if it tries to creep up. So I am going to stitch all the way around here. I'll do that off camera, that top stitching. And then the last thing we'll need to do is to attach the handles. The way I want to attach the handles is I want to see that contrast peeking through. So I will slip it under there and then just clip it like this, and then I'll just top stitch. You could definitely rivet if you wanted to. If you feel this is too thick, you could do that. But that is my plans for doing that. So I'm going to go off camera and do these last few steps, and then we'll come back, look at everything, and talk about the bag and all the materials I used. My Sarah bag from Ormino is officially done. Everything's completed on it. I didn't make a crossbody strap, but I'll see if the person this is going to wants that. But this is gorgeous. I love every bit of it. The pattern is really well written, easy to follow steps, nothing hard, but still you get just this really unique, gorgeous look bag. I'm using prints from the Emporium, both the vinyl exterior, the cotton lining, and even the pumpkin lining pocket pieces are all from Brittany from the Emporium. Zipper tape is from Ormino. Glitter vinyl is from My Little Shindig. Not sure where this came from. It's actually came from Brittany's house. I don't know. Maybe she knows. Everything comes together perfectly on this pattern. Look at that gorgeous recessed zipper. You could not have a more beautiful recessed zipper than that. I did close up my pocket. Let's look at the back. Thanks so much for watching another tutorial of mine. And I hope today in your sewing room that you're able to sew up a brand new pattern that's just stunning, that just comes together beautifully, and that you're so proud of it whenever you're done. Thanks so much for watching, and you have a great day.